made into its modern shape in the 70s. Yeah, something like that. I'd have to go look at the record. The interiors have changed a lot. Some of the controls have changed. But with modern rig, if you put a modern mast and sails and things on and tune it, a lot of the older boats are still used in competitive 10, 20, 30 years old. And they're fine. Okay. All right.
So you can put it up here.
Just put it up there so we can look at it. Okay, yes. Is this yours, the one that came off?
It came off the other boat.
The A-bomb.
Oh, it came off the little A-bomb. Okay.
Now, let me see if I can.
Okay, so are you guys, I'm going to tell you what my plan is for today, for you and anyone who's watching Caesar.
And there's, and one more joined us.
Oh, I'm not sure who's on there. So a lot of years ago, I was just as confused as anybody else. I mean, I've said a lot of boats, like all of you may have. And this was one of the most confusing boats to tune it that I'd ever seen. So I think I probably raced the Snipe the first time in 1980 or 81. And I was completely lost. Somebody was standing in the parking lot trying to, and so then as I got into sailing again in the late 90s and 2000, it was still confusing. I had a couple of these McLaughlins, and then I had other boats, Pearsons and Nichols and Jodtech, and it was still completely confusing. So I started reading the tuning guides. If you look online, it won't be any problem for you to find. Quantum, North, South American sail makers, European sail makers, all have tuning guides. And they show you how to do all these measurements. Some of these tuning guides are 30 pages long, okay? I know for a fact that the Quantum and North ones are about that. There's a good one on Snipe Today website by Peter Comet. It's not 30 pages long. You know, Peter's a really good lawyer. It's reasonably complex to understand because there's one or two, there'll be a sentence in there that seems relatively simple, and you start thinking about it and you go, wait a minute, there's like 20 things in that sentence, okay? So what I tried to do about 8 or 10 years ago when we started trying to work on the fleet in St. Pete, and Gonzalo Corvella helped me, was I said, was the coach at USF, and he's now moved to Europe, to Spain, I think. He and I said, let's make a chart or a table so that we can do something in a kind of a shortcut, simple fashion that you can carry with you to a site, and you can do it. And we called it the Secret Poltergeist Tuning Guide, but we've been giving out to everybody for 10 years. So anyway, so this is the latest 2020 version. I made one for everybody. I made multiple ones. I have an old one. Do you have the new one?
I don't have the new one.
Okay. So some of the things have changed. Anybody who's on the Zoom, you're going to have to get it by email.
Okay.
Okay.
And Abby joined us too.
Okay, so what it is it's a spreadsheet. I teach statistics, by the way, yeah. And it's got the values on it. Now, most of these are the same values that you'll find in those big tuning guides. But it's even a little bit fancier than that, because a lot of this information I got from a system that Peter Comet uses in Miami. And he actually color codes all the lines and places on his boat where the crew can put it on the green or the red setting or something. It's really good. It's just complicated. So what this is each of the columns is a different estimated wind range, okay? So the first column is 0 to 7, and the next one's 8 to 10, and the next one's 11 to 15, and it gets much higher. Some of the people in South America use some values that are more outliers.
Thank you.
We'll send it to you by email, though.
Particularly, okay. Email it to you. I didn't know to do it. I think if you there are certainly some really, really good sailors that use values that are a little bit different than this. But this is real close to what all the tuning guides would say within range, okay? So I'll show you and so if you're ever sitting out there and you're going to the Nationals or Regatta and you're setting your boat up and you've got a ruler, what you're gonna really need is a ruler or a tape measure, a tension guide, one of the loose tension guides, a jib luff wire. You can put the jib up, but it's easier just to use the luff wire. I like a level for some things, and then and you have to have a way to adjust the tension on your shrouds, which most people are using Staymasters, like is on this boat. You can do it by putting pins in the different locations, and you can do it with the new Pearson mast adjusters, which you're not going to see in the United States much. The only way you'll see the new Pearson adjusters is you can go to the website where they sell it in Denmark, and you can still get them. You can get them in the United States, the new adjusters. I have one set at home on Green Flash from Andy Pimental at Job Tech in Providence, Rhode Island. He can get those. But for most people, just from West Marine or something, you just get the Staymasters. So here's what we do on a basic tune-up using these values, okay? One thing you're going to do right off the bat is just check the mast and the boat for the basic values, okay? And I have to bring the mast over here. We'll do it first because the mast is easier to deal with than anything else. And what we're looking, and since it's here and it's up, it may not be the first thing you would do when you were setting your boat up in your garage. And that is to check the spreaders, because you want to have all the spreaders set up before you get everything else rigged. And you may have already done it. Most of these boats, if you don't change it, are in the basic thing. And if you look on here, you'll see the spreader length, 16 3/4 to 17 inches. And if you're going to use metrics, it's 42 to 43 centimeters, okay? And what they're talking about here is the length of the spreader from this pin, which is at the mast, to this shroud wire that's going through the end of the spreader. It's the length of the spreader.
Into the wire.
Yes.
Into the wire.
And so you can see that you see there's 42 and there's 43 centimeters. And you see this wire is right dead in the middle between the two.
Is it for
And if you want to do it with inches, that is, well, 12 feet, you know, it's 17 inches basically. It's 16 3/4 or 17 inches. Now that's your basic starting point for the length of spreaders. If you're heavier, if you and your crew are heavier, if the mast is bendier, you know, under certain conditions, and it's on the sheet, you can make you can make them longer. And in the case of most of these Selden spreaders that we're using, the only choice you have is to take the little adjustment and just move it out one, you know, or move it in one. And so if you're a little bit heavier, you might want it one pin longer, something like that. So that's measure number one, is just to check that length. And your starting value is, and there's your English or American, and you can see that it's at 17 or 16 3/4, which is correct. So somebody's just simply, probably me, if this was your boat, whatever, has already set this one up to basic value. Then the next thing you do, and I'm going to get some help, is you take these two. Now these are not right. Somebody has. Okay, so what you've got here, Nadia, is you have spreaders that are not adjusted.
Okay.
This is an old Mueller boat because these need to be adjustable as to their angle from point to point. So just, in fact, what I usually do at home by myself is I always have in my little toolkit, handy dandy piece of, you know, whatever. And so I'll just take something like this if I'm at home in the garage by myself and just, you know, do some kind of a, the problem, of course, with this is that it comes loose and then it pops loose and then it whacks in the head.
That's why he moved.
But you can see. Now, here's the problem. If you don't have a spreaders that can adjust here with a screw,
Mm-hmm.
then you really need to replace the bracket or the spreaders to an adjustable.
Yeah.
And you can get by without it if it's set up correctly. But it's some conditions, if it's really, really windy, or if it's light, or if you're sailing with a particularly light crew or particularly heavy crew, adjusting these spreaders can make a huge difference in boat speed and pointing and things like that. And so I try to set them up for the conditions I expect. But as Nadia will probably tell you, when we were in Portugal or something, it was pretty steady. But you're in the parking lot, you take the mast down and you set it up for where you think, and then you get out on the water and then
See how that has a
the
line
wind
through it?
drops or it gets windy or something. You can't hardly adjust these.
This
There
thing is
are
a
without,
camera.
taking the mast down. There are a few people that put the adjustments on the bottom, and I have seen a few crews, either they'll put a centerboard across the deck and a chair on the centerboard and stand up and crawl up there and adjust them. I told you to do that. Or they have some kind of, they'll take the boat over near a balcony and reach out and adjust it so they don't have to take the mast down. But if you'll just hold this up, you'll see that the value on the chart for spreader angle in the first column is 29 and a half to 20 or 74 centimeters, okay? And so I happen to have it on centimeters. So you go from shroud to shroud, and you can see that this is too wide. This is on 20, push it as far there's, okay, so right, this is at 76, okay? It's also, if you turn it over, at 20, okay, so that's 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, that's at 30.
Wait, what?
It's actually a little more than 30. It's about 30 and a quarter. So you're too wide.
That's
Okay.
that's what the standard length spreader.
Yes, that's with the standard link spreader. And then all we're measuring right now, though, is the distance that creates this angle from point to point, okay? And so essentially, and I don't know why it's set up this way, this looks like a Sidewinder standard mast. The real solution to fixing this is probably to,
Well, can't you bring the spreaders in?
Then you shorten the spreader.
yeah, you can. All right, and one of the things they'll tell you in the tuning guides is when you start making one adjustment here and there off of the center point of the tuning guide, it changes other things that you don't want to change, you know. And so, yes, you can try and make those kinds of compensations where you say, well, okay, my width is too wide, so I'm going to try and shorten it. But then other things start happening. And so I'm not going to be the engineer that tries to defeat that. Somebody like one of these pro sail makers like George Szabo or something probably going to say, yeah, okay, I don't have an adjustable spreader, so I can do this and I can do that. But they'll make 3 or 4 adjustments, not just one. And they'll change. And so I'm hesitant to say you can easily compensate, because most of the boats, when we say you get an older boat and you want to make it competitive in modern racing, the hulls are the same, the hulls fair maybe, you know, you weigh it, the weight's fine. You put on a Sidewinder or Pearson mast and you're happy with the mast, you get some good sales, and you go out and you're wondering why I'm not pointing, or you're wondering why I'm not going fast. And I'm a horrible driver. I'm a skipper or something. You know, I don't hike. I don't practice all the time. But one of the things I found out over the years is that with snipes, with these long courses that are a mile long, 3/4 mile long, windward legs and stuff, you watch the real fast guys, and no matter where you start, by the time you get to the first mark, they're 5 boat lengths ahead, and you get to the next mark, and they're 10 boat lengths ahead, and then pretty soon they're just gone. You know? And a lot of it is some simple adjustment that you've got wrong. A lot of your tension, your mast placement, your spreader placement, and they just, when they get in the boat, everything's in the right place. And we can get to some more of that. But one of the things I would say on this boat, I mean, if it was me, I would figure out some way to make this spreader angle adjustable. And it may be that you can just do it by changing the spreaders. I may have a set of spreaders at my house that we could do it with. And you put a little, what you do is they have a little thing that goes into the, it fits into the end of the spreader down here. And it's got a screw, and you can turn the screw, and well, actually, yours, you know what? Yours could be made adjustable. You're just missing the screw.
Okay.
Okay. So you've got the little piece on the end. You're just missing the screw.
Okay.
So if you take this pin out, put the screw in, and turn it, you can make this angle correct.
Okay.
You know, when you twist it, it puts pressure on the back end of the bracket, and then it will make it go in. And so this needs to be in, I don't know, 1/2 an inch or something.
It's not gonna make it narrower than this though. That's limited by this.
Well, you're going to take this pin out.
But what's holding it up is this.
Is this
bearing
right?
here.
And that's one of the issues that you're going to run into is it may be that the bracket itself
That's what it looks like.
is limiting the angle. And I have no idea why somebody set it up that way to start with. You know, it may be that you have to remove the bracket, put it back in again, or you have to do something else. I don't know, you know, but it should be adjustable. And in fact,
I see the screws.
that one has screws on it, and that one is more narrow than this one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then to make sure that this is equal, I'll put a string across the top like this, and I'll take a level, and I'll put it right here, and make sure that the rig is level, and then I'll get somebody at each end, you know, and I sight down this like here, and check to see
That's
that-
nice, child.
that it's equal on both sides.
Mhm.
But if it's manufactured by a good manufacturer from the factory, they usually are real careful so that if you start with them both at the bottom line and put 3 turns in or something like that, it'd probably be the same on both sides. But you don't want one to be further in than the other, you know. So anyway, that's the only reason why I brought this over. I'm glad I did. I would say well, we can find a couple of those screws that go into this and try it and see if we can and see what we can do. But you're right, at some point in time,
That's max.
there may be a limitation. And what ends up happening is in some cases you have to do mechanical work on your
You could
Yeah.
grind down this
right.
part here.
So you may end up having to get a grinder out and mess with it. But this one right now is, it's a little bit too
Too wide.
wide. But again, I don't know who used it or set it up. This mast was set up by Mitch Hall when Mitch and Hillary used it at a Nationals. And I don't know what they were doing or thinking at the time.
Okay.
Okay, so does that make sense with this? All right, so we'll just put this down and then we'll work on some of the other basics. Okay. this is, like I said, this is kind of like just basic pull into the parking lot and do things. The next thing I'm going to do, which is on here that a lot of people are not familiar with, is some of these distances, especially on older boats, that we have between some of the cleats and parts of the boat. So Nadia, or are you the camera person? Somebody, one of you. One of the things you want to do, because some of the older boats, you go from where the vertical stem of the bow is, and this should be at 11 inches. Okay?
Excuse me, what is 11 inches?
It's on
The
here. The
pin?
distance from where the vertical plane of the bow is to where this pin is.
Uh-huh.
And you want it as far forward as possible. In fact, that's on here somewhere. I don't know where it is. It's anyway. And so what's happening is you can see that it's close. It's probably in the right place, but you don't want to go really from the deck.
Oh, I see.
Hey.
You really want to go from the vertical
Yeah, I
edge
see.
here, right?
Not from
Okay.
around.
All right. And so what somebody has done, this is really close. It could be that you're maybe 1/8 of an inch off, but it may not be, but it's so that should be 11 inches on a few of the older boats. Those are not, if it's off a whole lot, then you want to be able to put, because people have taken these out and put them back in differently. You want your jib luff wire at the farthest point forward that's legal, which is going to be at 11 inches right there.
So I have a question, because this is my forestay.
Yeah, that needs to go on that wire. You need to put your jib luff wire on the front,
Oh, that's
and you need to put
interesting.
the forestay on the back one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah.
So let's do that now.
Yeah. So, well, we're going to put a luff wire on in just a minute. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now hold.
So now, can I still change? You're saying that the headsail goes in front.
Yes.
Be that way.
This is only just for
Let's just keep it from falling.
that's just to keep the mass from falling down. So
That's important.
that doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's important now.
So now that I move it backwards, is that a problem?
No, because the head
No.
state, it's the luff wire pin that you want, right?
Okay.
Okay. So if you take this and hold it right there where that pin is,
Which pin? The back one or the front
the
one?
front one. Okay.
Okay. So where's the
Now-
other pin?
You look on here and it says your distance. It says 11 inches from stem. See the jib tack, the jib leads. This and this is in Peter Commit's thing that he wrote recently. This distance to this
How you doing?
should be about 88, 89 inches. Okay,
Okay, hang on. I'm at where the pin would be.
right where the pin would be, and so and in terms of centimeters, we're talking about.
Tuning guide.
I like, I'm doing this. 200 and I'm sorry. I didn't write down the centimeters. Okay.
So which one
Anyway.
is what's the name of this measurement? Tack
The
to
jib
lead.
Tack.
tack to
jib
jib
lead.
lead.
88.
Tack to jib lead. So start with it at 88.
What am I at?
I don't know. Let's see. 7 feet times 12 is 84. No,
Uh-huh.
7 times 12.
no. What is no? Yeah,
60 plus.
17 and 14 is 84.
84. So
That seems really short.
yes, it does. So, the boat manufacturers did some stuff, but generally, if you look at this, they'll tell you that it's 88, depending on the wind conditions, up to about 86. I think that Peter Commit online, I think he starts at 89 maybe, but this is the range we're talking about.
So you move the leads forward and win.
Yes, you move the leads forward in wind.
That's counter to what we normally do on big
I know,
boats.
but don't
We
forget
flattened
everything
the
you
shape.
ever forget everything you did on a J24. If you do that, you're in trouble. Okay. So if you read all of those tuning guides and you read what Peter Commits article in Snipe today, he'll tell you that on the Snipe the jib is generally further forward and further outward than you would think. Okay, just he's got different conditions and he discusses the reasons and stuff. I'm not the engineer. I'm just telling you that when on my boat, on Poltergeist, which is the Pearson, and on the Job Test, we measure these, and 88 inches is what you're looking for. Now then, here's the thing that's really different on block ones usually. This distance across from car to car, and by the way, a lot of people, you know, a lot of the Snipes put a separate pack line. I used to have it on my block, which is a ring around the jib sheet here, but you can adjust from over there, so that instead of just changing this car and going straight to the car, you're actually going through a ring that you can pull up or let out.
Cool.
A block or a ring.
What purpose of that?
So that you're changing the angle without having to actually move this car.
Gotcha.
So you can sit on that side and adjust the car that's on the other
So
side.
basically adjusting the leads while
Yeah, you're
sailing.
adjusting the leads to make it narrower or wider without, and so, you know, on mine, that's probably what this block is that's down here now that's not being used.
Uh-oh, push block. Hang on, let me-
Right here, it's under the deck.
What do you want me to do with that?
Well, you just have to look at a boat that's got it rigged on it. Because what they do is they'll have a line that goes from this side, under the deck, over there to a block, up here and up, and or under the deck here, and you can use it to adjust the angle of the jib lead and here.
It's like a barber holder type of thing?
Yeah, it's like a bubble hole, yeah, or a twing or something. And so that way you're not having to try to crawl across the deck to the block downside and move this around.
Yeah.
You know, you just adjust the lead.
It's like an in-hauler.
Right. Yeah, and that's very common on Snipes. In fact, I think all the modern boats that have been built in the last 15, 20 years have it on there. There may be a few that don't. Maybe some of the Brazilian boats and stuff don't. But
What
most
was
of them-
88?
Hmm?
What was 88?
Well, it wasn't 88. You're just gonna, you know, I'm just, you know, it was not at 88 when we just looked at it. But one of the problems with McLaughlin's when they built them, and they built them for a long time, they were really good boats, is if you take this and put it right there on that, wherever the lead is, right here, where the lead comes to, not the cleat. All right, you see that it should be 27 inches across from that lead to this lead, okay? All right, 24, 25, 26, 27. Do you see what I'm saying?
Way outboard.
Right, and you see that in a lot of winds you can go up to 32. So 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. So you're basically sailing right now at where you would sail if it was blowing 18 or 20. All right, again, that's one of the reasons why you put the little adjusted
The
lead on
in-haulers,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, because these boats were built when they were designed by somebody that had the best thinking in the sailmakers of the time. But there's too much width here. The deck, the interior, which was designed to be able to move around and stuff. It's got a high floor and all this other stuff. A lot of the boats nowadays have a deck that comes and goes in right here. And they're more, and then they put the jib leads sometimes here, you know, almost on the curve or on the or inside interior. And so what you're seeing is that they're more inboard, more narrow, okay? But each different boat, depending on whether it's a Mueller or a Nichols or a Job Tech, the manufacturer at the time, in the last few years, all of them are going to put them in the same place. Any modern boat from Brazil or Italy or whatever nowadays is going to put them in a place similar to this to start with. They'll be adjustable, but it'll be similar to this. But any boat that you have that's 15, 20, 30 years old, even though the whole shape and weight might be okay, may have leads that are not consistent with these. And so that's particularly the case where you're going to want some kind of a twang.
Because in my case, I'm set.
Yeah,
That's that.
Yeah, you're
But that's what he's saying is you could put an in-hauler on.
yes.
Like you can add an in-hauler.
And you can find plenty of boats that are examples. I think I put one on Lindy. I'm pretty sure Lindy had one. Lindy's the same boat as this boat, it's McLaughlin. And I rigged it up about 2 years ago, and we used it in the World Masters in Nassau 4 years ago. And when we spent all summer redoing everything. And I'm pretty sure at one point we had twins on Lindy, unless somebody took them off.
Oh,
And so in order to get around the fact that some of the boats don't have things in the exact right place, and that's why I put them on here, you have to go through and do that. Then, let me see if there's, what's the next
You need
thing?
a lot of blocks,
Yeah,
can pleats,
you need a lot of little
non-stretchy
blocks.
lines.
And a lot of people, and people put those blocks underneath. Now, I'm going to be honest with you on McLaughlin's. If you look at Lindy does not have, I don't think, the shrouds here. And what McLaughlin was doing was attaching the shrouds to a block that was, glassed in right there as a strong point on the boat. It's where you lift the boat with the lifting bridle. It's also where the shrouds go. Most people who have McLaughlins for very long they'll take the rails off because they leak into the tanks through these rails.
Through the scrolls.
Right. And when they take the rails off, then they have to reweigh the boat because you may have to put lead weight in it to make it minimum weight. So when I redid Lindy a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, and I redid it, and it took me about a week or two in the summer, I took the rails off. We then put, goop or something on the edge of the rails
shooting course.
so that it wouldn't leak. And then I put portals in the floor and glued lead weight onto the
Inside the
bottom, inside the portal, and then weighed it so it was minimum weight. Okay. And so, you can call Andy Pimentel or somebody and they'll tell you where to put it, but the weight on this one, because you can't violate the moment of inertia test that they have, which makes the ends and the middles different distribution. But on this boat, on these, what you're going to end up doing in most cases, if you take the rail off, if you don't, that's fine. But if you take the rail off, and redo
How much
it.
weight are the rails?
Well, it's a combination because I not only take that off, but I also take this lever off, and you add it all up, and it's about 5 or 10 pounds, and then you have to add about 5 or 10 pounds of lead weight if it's not minimum weight. So
I have a question.
yeah.
Now that we're bent over, I have 2 portholes in here. Are there like flotation bags in there?
No, it's just empty up there.
Huh.
And if I park my boat in the sun, which one of them is parked and locked into the St. Pete Yacht Club right now, you can't get in there, it's locked up. When I leave it out in the sun in Florida, I take one of those portals out.
Oh, yeah.
So that it will air out and dry out and won't get moisture and stuff in it. But at any rate, on these boats, the McLaughlins are fine, and a lot of people still race them. But you'll go to some of the regattas, and I don't know about Martin Bibbs. I don't know what he's doing. But there's a good chance that Martin Bibb has redone some of these. He's probably got a twang. He's probably got lead weight either up under the deck or in the floor. And he's probably redone some of these controls. And I would just have, and his boat's older than this one, because this is about a 2600 and Martin's is about a 2500. So is that boat at your house? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. So we just have to uncover it and look. But I'll bet 9 out of 10 that what Martin did worked. Yeah. I mean, he's redone everything to some kind of version of modern control. Okay. Yeah. And another thing that people will probably do is they'll take this lever off and they'll run the puller and the pusher for the mast. Move the mast forward and move it back. They'll put a cascade system of line. And again, sometimes that's the old style mast step, which is fine. But you can order from Pearson or somewhere a mast step that's just like that, but it's a bar, black bar, and it's got about 10 pre-drilled holes in it, maybe a dozen. And what I did on Lindy is I took that mast step out and I rebedded the longer one with all the holes in it so that I had locations to put about a dozen blocks so that I could do the twing, I could do the cascade for the pour pusher, and I could do all the jib halyard tension. And by now you could drill holes in that, but and put a Beckett or something there. But if you get the one from Pearson that's pre-done, then you just take a few screws out. It's time to rebed it anyway, so it won't leak. Put some glass in the screw holes and screw the new one down really, really well with glass in and stuff. And then you've got a place to put all the blocks. And so that's just, and I know if you look at some of these older boats that have been redone, you'll see that they've done that. And then if you've got about a dozen holes, you also have the ability then to move the base of the mast, which we haven't got to. That's the next thing. So if you take this again, and if you measure from the front stem of the boat where we were a minute ago, your starting point for the pin is 60 inches, okay? Which is right here. So this one's probably got the pin in the right place, okay?
Or you
5 feet, 60 inches.
You take the widest point.
Well, you have to take the mast out and you have to drop the
I see what you're
line
saying. Yeah.
and find where the pin is.
Gotcha.
So which one is that one?
It's the distance.
Mouth.
Yeah, the mast butt. Now, some of the South Americans will sail with it further forward. And there's a few in Europe. There's one guy from Spain, I'm trying to remember his name, who has the new Pearson mast like I have. And the new Pearson mast actually has a Teflon plate, so you can move, you can slide the mast. But every time I start doing that kind of stuff, I just go slower. But anyway, but it's got a pin, and you can move it. Or if you know that you've got a lot of wind, or you feel more comfortable doing it at your weight, there are people that I have seen move that pin 1 hole forward or even 2 holes forward or something.
Is that the only way to adjust the rake then?
You really can't do it while racing. There's no way to do it.
That is how you do it.
And that's how you, no, that's not how you adjust the rake. We already got the rake yet. That's just the location where the center of effort's going to be for the bottom of the mast. Okay. And I would say the boat is basically designed to put it at 60 inches. Okay. If you're a crazy Brazilian, I hate to say it, I'm sorry if you're on that. And you sail barefoot and and do all kinds of other strange things. You set your tension really, really high. You don't do the spreaders the way everybody else does with the Olympic sails and stuff. Then some of those people do sail with it an inch forward. I've been to races where I've measured and seen that they have their mast forward. But most of the really good sailors in the United States, all Diaz and Ernesto Rodriguez and Peter Comet, they're going to start with it at 60 inches. And your best bet is to probably start with it at 60 inches. If you want to try an experiment, that's fine.
No, I got a question. Those 60 inches here in the middle of the mast, won't they
No,
change
it's to the pin.
to the pin?
That's how the
To
mast
the
out
pin.
to see it.
You can't tell unless you take the pin out. You have to take the pin out and you have to put a piece of line on it and drop it and see where the line is.
Gotcha.
But I can tell from where this one measures is that Bob Foster, when he set up the boat, he put it in that 60 inches. I mean, I know this one, that is where this one is. So I
Because when
just,
you start playing with the free band and the position of the mast forward or back, you're going to alter this, but not the pin.
well, your best bet's to tune these things kind of with these kinds of measurements that I'm giving you, because each thing you change changes something else. And I will also tell you that if you really want to get extreme, if you go to look at Lindy, okay, these are inboard more than some of the boats they built in the last 15, 20 years. And so a lot of people have taken, I did on Lindy, taken the shroud mount out when you redo this, and they mount a plate here. They mount the shroud mount here, outboard about an inch, by bolting it through. In order to protect the deck from pulling out or leaking, when you bolt it through, you put a plate back here, and you bolt the shroud mount here. And then what you do is you run a one of these just solid plates, turnbuckles, from the bottom underneath here to that mounting point that McLaughlin built in. Just a solid piece that puts pressure on. It transfers the pressure from this outboard mount to the plate. Yeah. Now, this is surgery. It's going to take you a day or two, and it's going to be frustrating. You got to crawl around down there. On Lindy, I think Brian Lindy helped do it. Instead of putting in a plate here that had 3 or 4 holes in it like we normally use, he put in one big loop, maybe, or something. Anyway, it's only got one setting or something. But it does have, several of the McLaughlins have redone these so that it's out here about an inch. Okay? All right. So it's not, again, you can compensate for that by changing some of these things. I'd have to ask George Zabo or Peter or something. And George can tell you how to comp his head because he does it in his head. He can say, oh, okay, if your shroud mounts are a half an inch or an inch too far in on the old McLaughlins, then what you need to do is adjust your tension half an inch, whatever, you know. I mean, he knows because of the experience, that kind of stuff, but I couldn't figure that out. But I know that on McLaughlins, now you could race this boat like this, and it probably wouldn't, once it was tuned up and going fast, especially in the light air we have here in Florida, it's not going to make much difference. But there may be some circumstances where you've got a slight, kind of wondering, why am I not going quite the same way that the person did not do. And one of the things that you see in this when I took the boat leaving to Nassau, we had put those outboard because the guy who chartered it was from Finland. He wanted one that these were outboard. He said that. So, all right, now we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Okay, we're making progress. All right, the other thing that you do next is everything should be off in terms of the rams and anything that's got tension on it, except for 2 things. You want your main halyard and jib halyard. Yeah, so this has to be completely loose or not pushing on it. And then what I do is I take the luff wire. I have luff wires made. Right now, you know, I'm using, I used to use some Zaoli sails. Europe. I think I got them in but I also use, right now I'm just using Quantum, but the different sail manufacturers have 2 different ways to attach the sail to the luff wire. Quantum's really cool because you just take the becket or whatever's at the top of your halyard, and it goes to the top of the luff wire and the top of the sail, the grumbling sail, simultaneously. There are several kinds of sails, and I've used them, where the expectation is the top of the sail is below where this is attached. And you have what's called an aircraft swage. It's an extra hole swaged into a piece that's at the top. And you tie the top of the sail with a piece of string or line or whatever to the swage. And there's a difference in the way that they set on the deck in terms of their sweep and the way they're cut and how high they are. And so I have found that you need 2 different luff wire lengths, slightly different, about an inch or 2 different, depending on which type you use. If you get sails from Quantum, they will come with a luff wire. Which now you know how long luff wire needs to be. Okay, you don't even have to think about it. You know, they come. But I will take these luff wires and I will either make or have somebody make. I usually make them myself. A luff wire, and I'll make 3, 4, or 5 of them the exact same way. One of, I mean, just absolutely exactly the same way. So I'll put one in the jib, but I don't have to put the jib up to the boat because all I have to do is put up one of the luff wires that I know is the same length. So then I can tune this shroud on the boat without having to put the jib on, which is really, really handy, particularly if it's windy or you don't want to just re-roll the sail all the time and then new sails and stuff like this. So I just have a bunch of things that I make, and they're pre-made to do that. So, is that your halyard?
Yes, sir.
Halyard? Okay, put that on here. Right, because you're not going to use. I mean, you don't want to use your forestay at all. So, do we have a Beckett or pin for the bottom down here, other than when we got this on? I got one in the car, but
I tell you, I hate ringings. I hate ringings. I'm mosquitoes.
So if you guys have questions, just unmute yourself. I'm having a hard time seeing the chat. Okay.
So we need to. This is the thing everybody's always doing in the parking lot. Assuming everything else is right. This doesn't have to be very fancy. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take this and put this. All right, you go ahead and, well, we'll get to the jib halyard back. Where's your main halyard?
Right. Hanging.
Right. Oh, there it is. All right, put this to the main halyard. Okay. And so I'm just going through this sheet. I don't know if y'all follow. I'm going through this sheet one row at a time to check the basic stuff.
And we sent the sheet on WhatsApp for everyone else too.
Okay. Well, I've emailed it to people, and you know, if things change, we can change it. But, so, all right, go ahead and put that up to the top, just like the main was put to it.
Nice new one.
Your speed move on this.
This is new halyard. Happy.
Okay, now I used to have the measurements on the parking gate, but nobody was using them. You know,
To the pin.
there's another electronic gate made by parking. It's real popular.
You don't have the left side on yet. You don't have the left side on.
The jib's not up.
Okay.
It's okay. So we'll put this on. All right, you watch it. Okay.
You watch that.
Yes, sir.
Oh, where is it? It's well, here, bring that over here. I thought I was doing it on that side because I was trying to.
Coming out.
you don't have any, how do you lock that down? Where's your put your,
Hey, Nadia.
Yeah.
So I have a question about the measurement numbers.
okay.
What are the numbers going to differ between the different types of mass, like the Sidewinder versus the Pearson?
They can be slightly different. They're pretty close. The
Okay.
difference is mainly in how bendy they are. Sidewinder standards are probably the stiffest. Cobras and Pearson, the new Pearson mast, are probably a little bit more flexible. And we haven't really gotten into that, but what I've got on here, you can adjust the spreader length and make it a little longer if you've got a more bendy mast. Not much, you know, half an inch or something. And what's really funny is one of the guys in Argentina, our new executive world, whatever it is, executive, recently took 2 or 3 standard Sidewinder gold masts in his backyard and hung weights on them, all identical, all from the same manufacturer, and they deflected a little different from each other. So the manufacturing process of mast, even when they're the same brand, can vary 5 or 10%. Okay.
Welcome to boat buildings.
Yeah. So what you really end up having to do is, to be real honest with you, the best way to do it, and I haven't done it with a new boat, is you have to go sailing. Nadia, we have never done this. You go sailing and you set it up and somebody sights up the mast. They crawl up, they look right up the mast. And if it's bending a little bit to leeward, you shorten the spreader a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. If it's bending a little bit windward, you lengthen it 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. And you do that until it's pretty close to straight. And Peter Commit actually puts in his thing that he wants it to be a 1/4 inch deflection, or I don't know why. But anyway, if it's bending any kind of significant amount, then you change your spreader length in order to compensate for that. And you almost have to do it mast by mast, even though you know that Cobras and some of the the new Pearson teardrop are more flexible, and you know that Sidewinder standards and Sidewinder golds are a little bit stiffer.
You mean the bend of the belly of the mast, or the center of the mast?
Right. What you're doing is you crawl there and you look straight up here.
Yeah.
To where the spreaders are, and you look and see if you're sailing upwind in 7, 8, 9 knots in a normal day. It's very steady. You're not going through waves. You have to find a perfect day, you know, and you can change the spreader length a little bit for your mast. And the really good sailors do that. They go out and they take their mast and they check them. And we just haven't done that. We need some sailing sessions. Okay, can you put this on? Can you pull? Where's your jib halyard?
Right here.
Here. Okay. Pull on that until this loose gauge shows, I'd say 18. And what we're 17 or 18, which is the second row down on the sheet. The little arrow right there.
Oh, no, I don't think I can go over.
Oh, well, that would be a problem.
Oh, baby, yeah.
Is it not capable of going that far? Is there something restricting it? Okay, there you go. Now you're getting there. They're only like 17 or 18. Okay, well, that's good right there. All right, that's your base tension, okay? And you can see on here that we've ranged from 17 to 22 on the loose P1 gauge. And then this should be about 21.6. It's 21.6 close enough for government work. On McLaughlin's, it can be off 3/4 of an inch or an inch because.
So this is the PP1.
Yeah.
And one, you said 17 and a half.
17, 18. You got it on about 18.
I have 16 right here.
16.
Yeah.
You moved it. Put it on 17. It was. Put it on a little bit more. Okay. What's it on now?
Now it's at 18.
Okay. 18. Good. All right, well, if I pull this tight, you're at about 21.6 and a half. And for McLaughlin, you can add or subtract a little bit because the deck's a little different.
Okay, so that's right. So
Yeah, so whoever set this up for neutral whenever they last done it. Somebody raced it and they set it up. So it's about in the right place. Now, what you're gonna do is as the wind conditions are stronger, you're going to increase the tension on those shrouds. And you're also going to use these turnbuckles. And you're going to change this number that's at the back. And it's going to get shorter. Okay? So two things happen. This number goes from 17 or 18 up to 20. I just never get it much over 20 or 21. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not a young chick. And once it starts getting to be 21, I can sail at 24, 25. I don't ever capsize, do I? Never capsize. And I just don't like to break stuff. And every time I go out over 20, it's expensive. I break a pole, I break a mast, I've broken a mast, rudder comes off, somebody hits me. So generally, when it gets to be 20 and 21, unless it's an international championship, and Nadia and I have been practicing for 3 years to get ready for it, it generally, when it gets to be 20 or 21, I go to the bar.
Yeah.
And people will go out. And I'm not the only one. The last time we had the Nationals in Miami,
Mm-hmm.
and this is 7, 8, 9 years ago, and I was down there, and it was a nice day when we started, and about the second race, we were going upwind. It was a long thing. We were tired. We were hiking for all we were, and I was sitting there watching the wind just get windier and windier and windier, and it got well over 20. I have in my kit an anemometer, okay? So I'm sitting there going, okay, that was 23. When we got to the Windward Mark, which was towards the Coconut Grove Sailing Club, I just kept going past the Windward Mark and went in. And when I looked over there, Jerry Thompson and old man, the other boats were right next to y'all. Yeah. And, you know, there were about 25 boats that were still out there. About 7 finished. All the others capsized. A couple people broke things. And I'm just at the point now that it's not only expensive to break a mast or a rudder, but it's also a hassle ordering things and buying things and shipping things. And it's just like, so the boat is a really great boat at 12 and 15 and even 17, 18. But once they start getting over 18 to 20 and you've got some chop and you're starting to plane and they're doing triangles, unless it's really, really steady and you've got a real good handle on things, you're going to break something over 20 because the boat was designed in 1931. It's a heavy boat with a light rig. So if you want to sail in that kind of stuff, go to Nassau because Nassau, it blows 15 to 20 all the time and the water's flat. And you can just zip around and you can plan your jods, you can plan your tacks because you're inside 3/4, it's like Tampa Bay, you're 3/4 surrounded. And they have real steady, whatever, trade winds or something. And it's fun to go in the spring to Nassau. It's only $250 or $60 on Bahamas.
Have they canceled the summer?
Hmm?
Have they canceled the summer?
I don't know yet. Well, Bahamas won't let you in.
Yeah.
So they're going to race the Bahamian Nationals in June this month, but you can't go to it because you can't get in.
Okay.
But whenever they start sailing again, maybe we hope next March. I think I've been 8, 9, 10 times at this point. I don't know how many times.
It's fun.
Fly over there. The Bahamians will put you up in somebody's house. It won't be that expensive, and it's a blast. Because when you leave the dock, you sail one race, you come in for lunch, you go out and sail another race, and you come in for a party. You do that 5 nights in a row.
Pretty civilized.
Yeah, and they will do an absolutely perfect windward, leeward, or triangle, and
For like 5 days.
it's it's great. You've been there a couple times. I mean, the sailing is fun. It's really good sailing. So it's very steady. So you can sail these boats if you expect it to be 18 to 20 and it's steady. Then you're not going to dig into a wave and invert the mast and break it. But basically what you're going to do when you put, if it was more windy, and it's on the chart in the columns, as the wind expectation increases, you're going to put more tension on that gauge, and you're going to change this from say 26 or 27, 21.6, 21.7, and that the centimeters on there. You're going to change this to 21.4 or 21.5. You just keep going down. Yeah.
Now, I got a question. With it that we haven't put any tension on the lever or anything.
No.
It was totally loose.
We're not doing that right now.
The only thing we put was head, tail,
Right.
shroud.
The only thing you're
I mean,
dealing
let's
with right
say,
now is the jib halyard
halyard.
tension and shrouds. That's it.
Hmm.
You're not touching that lever
But
right now.
what you're doing is you're effectively tensioning the shrouds with the halyard.
Correct.
Yes. You're pre-bending the mast with the jib halyard.
Yeah.
And if you're on the water and conditions change, and Nadia's learned how to do this, a lot of the crews have trouble because they have to go out and practice it a couple times. If you're between races and you're going downwind, you can, put the boat into irons, lean it over, and one of the two shrouds will become loose. And if you say, okay, we need more tension or we need less tension, you can write it on the deck or get a sheet and write it down, and you can take one or two turns off of your staymaster. So if you're being overpowered, you're going to put one turn on, maybe two turns on, depending on how much you need. If you see the wind beginning to get light, you take a turn off. And that is actually a critical adjustment, because when you're out sailing these courses all day, being one or two turns too tight, one or two turns off, well, if you've got too little tension on, you're hiking your butt off, and you're not beating anybody because you're overpowered.
Yeah, just slightly. So.
Well, you can try banging it and stuff, but you won't point right compared to everybody else. You won't be able to hold your lane. You're not going forward. Right. And so what happens is that getting it in the right spot is important. Well, what you're doing when you put a turn on or take a turn off is you're changing this rate from 21.6 to 21.5 to 21.4. And so most people take the Staymasters and sometimes they ride on the deck, sometimes they'll have a little plastic card in the boat, or if it's, and they'll have numbers on there. They have numbers on those, and you can write down a 2, 2.5, 3, whatever, and you check. And when you go out sailing, Nadia's done this a bunch of times sailing with me. You get out there on the water and say, okay, it's getting lighter. And yeah, I think it is. Okay, we need to take a turn off. Okay. If you're right, the boat will be fast as everybody else. If you're wrong, you're going to either have trouble pointing or you be overpowered or underpowered or something.
So,
yeah.
So jib halyard consistency, is there a mark that you're using?
That's a real good question. What I usually do is take this hook or some part of this line, and I will take my Sharpie like this, and if this is my neutral, which it is for this boat, I make a mark right there. So when I take that off going downwind and go back upwind, I pull the top of this to that. You can use whatever, people put lines on the marks, they put lines everywhere. But I usually do exactly what you're saying. I'll put a mark on the mast and on the deck so that I can see where my neutral is, and I'll know if I'm in front or behind neutral on the mast. And if I look up and I see that the mast is not where it's supposed to be, something's not right. Yeah, I start looking for it. And the same thing with this. When I come around and we're all scrambling to get the pole down and go back upwind and all this other kind of stuff, one of the first things I do, I actually usually do it right in the last boat length or two before I get to the mark, is pull this jib halyard tension on and hit that mark. If I fail to do that or forget to do that, it causes a lot of issues. So that's how exactly what you're saying. Most people do put a mark on the jib halyard somewhere. I'm not sure why this thing's got so much angle right here. It'd be really nice if it would go down somehow. I don't know what. Twisted. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's right. But you get the idea. And on this boat, the two things that are absolutely critical are probably jib halyard tension. And believe it or not, it's not going to surprise you, bang. Because it's a very tactical boat. Everybody who's driving the boat has to go fast. And in the very best combinations, the ones who really win a lot of the international things, in most cases, the crew is playing the vang and the crew is calling the tactics, which really puts a lot of pressure on crews. And the skipper is playing the vang, but the skipper is concentrating on boat speed. They're watching where they're pointing. They're watching their telltales. They're watching their rudder to see if the rudder's not creating, friction. And they're really concentrated, because once my head starts doing like this, and I'm looking to see whether we can tack or we're on the ley line or whatever, then I'm not going as fast. So now there are different ways of doing it, there are different combinations. But if you go to Augie and Kathleen, everybody wants Kathleen to crew. She drives her own boat. She was third or fourth in the women's worlds as the skipper, but she's like an Olympic world level crew. And if you're sailing with Kathleen, if you can moderately make the boat go in the right direction, you end up winning half the races, because she's a fantastic tactician and she's really good at playing the vang and the Cunningham to keep the boat powered up and not overpowered. And Kathleen does a really good workshop on for crews. And I know that in traditional dinghy sailing, a lot of times the skipper wants to play the vang, which you can do. And I know a lot of people still do that. And I used to do that for years, but I've gotten to the point now that even with new crews, I would prefer to have the crew doing two things: playing the vang to keep the power. If they're coming out to hike, they bring the vang with them. Because if they're hiking, we need more vang on, kind of, if that makes any sense. And then I want the crew to be looking upwind and telling me where there's traffic and ley lines and puffs. And then downwind, I want them to be facing back and telling me where there's puffs and people on starboard and, which, that kind of thing. So that I can concentrate usually on boat speed, but you can do it differently.
I have a question. Does the boom ever goes parallel to the boat? Because on this
Yes.
boat, I've noticed that the boom somehow is always tied at the back end, and I would love it to be parallel, and if it's not,
You don't want it.
and it bothers the heck out of me.
This is a different one.
This is gonna get expensive.
Yeah. Well, no, it just takes time. Yeah.
So is that
So,
Steve, is that because my bang attachment is wrong on the proportions of the lines?
the boom normally should ride parallel to the deck in the boat. Yeah, it's not, shouldn't be up or anything like that.
Guys,
I
your
don't know
phone again?
why.
I'll text it.
So
It
does that
would be.
mean halyard tension? Too
Could-
far up?
It could be that there's you might have some old sails, they shrink, and the leach of the sail starts pulling, and it raises the back end of the boom up, stuff like that. I could probably diagnose it, but we'd have to put up sails to look and see. But if the sails are good and the boat's rigged well and the outhaul's right and stuff like that, then the boom should be essentially parallel. And the sheet that I just gave you was written years ago. And there's a lot more fancier explanations in Snipe today and things like that. But that's a good one to kind of like keep in the pocket or something. Because what they're telling you here has to do with this mass forward and mass back. Most of the time, the port and the pusher shoves the mass forward and back. I would say 80 and 90% of the time, and I would just leave it. If you wanted to do anything, you might want to let it go quarter of an inch. If you go downwind and you pull it back, sometimes people do that to try and change the angle of the boom and get a little bit different pole angle and stuff. You've got to be really, really careful, because when you start pushing and pulling on that mast, and you turn downwind and you forget to take the bang off and stuff like this, you'll invert master brake, which I've done. And it's not just simply the way you've got it rigged. Because usually you'll put your crew will probably move forward, the skipper will probably move forward down in, and the crew may be up on the deck or something. And you're going on, if you've got any kind of speed at all. The way I broke mast is you dig the bow into the back of a wave, and it kind of stops the boat, and the mast just breaks right over the bow of the boat. Because this mast is thin and it's a heavy boat and it will invert. And so.
And the pressure
is
right there.
The pressure's right
So
there.
as soon as the sail turns?
Yeah. So your easiest bet, until you're really getting a lot of experience in 15 and 29 minutes, your best bet is to pretty much keep it in neutral. And if you're kind of concerned about your pointing or you're not sure about your boat speed, you can experiment with moving at a quarter or a half an inch in front of that neutral point that you've marked on the deck. And you can, but I generally, when it starts getting kind of crazy, especially if there's any kind of chop, we get wind from the east in St. Pete, we get chop coming across, and it's like a washing machine. I take a pusher and lock them both in. And then when I start going over waves, if I need a little bit of power, sometimes I'll, take some bang off and start working with a little bit just to kind of power up so I can get through some of the waves and stuff. But I'm real careful because I know that the mast, by the time you get rigging the mast done, even 5,000, 2,000, and it's just easier to take that chance, unless you're really sure it's going to make you go faster. And you've got a spare mast. So, and so I think that is just a lesson about it. And again, that's one of the reasons why we used to use levers. I've seen these boats with a screw that rotates with a line on both sides of the boat so you can force the mast forward and back. The bullshit shark used to have that.
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen these boats with levers. I've seen these boats. One of the boats I used to own was a McLaughlin like this, and we used to have a magic box on down in the floor.
Sonar.
Yeah, to try and what I would say right now is that the best thing you can do is just have a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, and we put a loop of line around the mast, and you may have to put in a port or something here. Andy Pimental actually puts a hole in this splash well and comes up and then goes up and down and then runs the controls back. Mm-hmm. So you don't even have any holes except for in the splash well. He puts a hole right here in the middle, puts a bolt through it.
He just pulls an F for it.
Yeah. And then you've got a control back there that pulls it forward. It's like 3 or 4-to-1, but most of the cascading is up and down right here. So you just have a line with a block on it here, maybe a double, and it goes up and down to the floor and splits, and one line to each side. And then the same way, if they take these levers off, and they take these levers off and they put a cascading set of lines parallel to the boom bang that's underneath it that goes to here and goes up and down and goes back. And then that way you can,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you can adjust the mast, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, some kind of thing like that. A little bit. There are a few radical people. I've seen them do it. They will go out there and pull the mast all the way back. I've tried it. Downwind and really, really, really light winds. It's 5 knots and you're just ghosting along. And you've got the boat heel all the way to leeward, and both you and the crew are cramped down under the deck or something. And very uncomfortable. But I've seen people pull the mast all the way back or something in order to gain some little weird shape on the sail that catches the breeze a little better and opens the leach or something. Yeah. And you can monkey with that kind of thing. But if there's any kind of wind, then you're actually racing. Other than to put it forward a little bit, I think Peter Comet and a couple of others will move it. If they're not sure they're pointing correctly and stuff, they'll move it forward 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and experiment just to see if it makes them point a little better.
So now I am confused. When am I going to use this controls to tighten the pole, the mast? You know, like this guy.
Is that your mast?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, this is that lever. See That ain't
I think the reason that I don't know for sure, but I'm gonna surmise. I think the reason why we put all these levers on there that pushed and pulled on man was because at the time that they were building the boats and putting the levers in, and I've got a whole box of these lever systems that I took out of boats in my garage. There must have 10 of them. Is because at that time all we had were pins on the shrouds, so you could pin it into 1 or 2 or 3 places, but you didn't have the staymasters. And so one of the ways to bend and pre-bend the mast a little bit without having the ability to make adjustments in the shrouds very much was probably more, on the water using the levers. And they would put these levers on that you could really shove or pull like this one. And it's okay, you can still use it that way. And part of the reason you still use it that way is because you may not use it that much. There are people out there, I'm sure that Augie and Ernesto, and they're in a battle for first or third with the guys from Brazil, whatever, and they're fighting it out, and they probably have their own little secret adjustments where they move that mast 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and it changes a little bit of their slot, it changes a little bit of their pre-bend. If you want to adjust those things, the way to do it is for everybody to get
Oh, I see.
a boat that's tuned up right, that's fast, with good sails. Poltergeist is a good example. It's at St. Pete right now. And set it up
Oh, this,
like on these tuning guides, put a good set of new sails on it, and go out and use it as a trial horse. And take everybody and put them side by side and go for a mile or 2 and start adjusting points to get your boat speed going. And I say that Miami does that every week. Ernesto and Peter and Augie and Charlie Bess, and we can name 5 others. The Vosses, they go out about once a week in Miami and line everybody up, go for a mile or 2 upwind, turn around, go for a mile or 2 downwind. Everybody adjusts until they all get their boat speed. And it's also a set of eyes because, like somebody like Ernesto Peters going, hey, your leech is too tight. Take some of that bang off. What's your Cunningham doing? And what happens is there's some boat handling. You can practice your job in tacking, but it's boat speed. And so when they get into these big international races, the fleet almost splits because the top semi-professional people have been going out and got their boat speed to where they're very confident. They put the boat in, they say, it's 12 knots, everything's set up, and you're just, you're going along with them and you're holding your lane, which I usually do, and then you get to the first mark and they've just gotten a few boat lengths ahead of you, and then they're playing shifts. And you're back there trying to avoid the traffic.
Sucking gas.
Yeah, and all hell breaks loose. It goes from bad to worse. So I think the times that I have been up to speed, it's because I had everything tuned right, number 1. And number 2, I went out and practiced. The years that I did the best, I had somebody who would come out every week or whatever we did. It's hard to say. But and if you go out and get the speed testing done and get practiced and play around with everything, then you go to the nationals or the North Americans or something and follow that. So this is just a shortcut. It's a guide to get you through basic measurements without reading the 30-page tuning guide. And there's a video that George Zebo did called Out of the Box that's sold by Skyrar. Used to be. I haven't seen one in years. I used to have a copy. Somebody borrowed it. I don't know where it is. And it was like they take a boat that's new 10 years ago and they go through exactly what we just showed you. George may do it better than I do, but it's exactly the same thing. They measure everything exactly the way we just measured. And anything that's not where they think it should be, they try to correct. And they do it with a brand new boat because they sometimes come from the factory and need things changed.
Are there any other measurements we should look at?
I think these are the basic ones. I mean, I think the second sheet I just gave everybody was something that somebody wrote years ago that's in one of the old Snipe Todays, but it's just a little guide on when to adjust your out haul, when to adjust your bang and things like that. But I think if your boat has stuff in the right place and if it's minimum weight, there's nothing wrong with it, and you adjust it to that sheet, you'll be pretty close to what all the tuning guides say. This is just an average of the tuning guides that you can take. If you get Quantum and North and Olympic and all these, you'll see that they have some very slight differences. You know, one of them will say, well, the spreader should be 17 and 16 3/4. Another say the spreader should be 17.
And the reality is the spreader should be whatever it takes to get the spreader and the mast to work correctly.
Exactly. And once you get it that close, your best bet's to sight the mast. And I didn't realize that this one didn't have a spreader adjustment.
Mhm.
We'll have to figure out how to make those adjustable.
That one also got hit by a tree during Irma,
Oh.
and we still have to straighten it.
So it's not even straight.
So I have another mast over there. No.
Well, we straighten them all the time. I mean, I've got one spare one that's locked up in St. Pete now. But you know, I kept the Sidewinder Gold that I have in St. Pete because when I bought the new Pearson mast, it's brand new. There's only a few of them out there. It's a real bendy mast. I wasn't absolutely certain whether I was going to like it or it was going to work or what. And so it's on the boat now, the new boat. And well, I want to take the old boat, which I know is fast, put it aside, right beside the new boat, and go out and do testing. So if they'll ever get decent weather and the virus goes away or something, then we can plan something, or we can take a couple of boats. One that's the poltergeist, if it's cleaned up and rigged, we know it's fast. It was second in the North Americans, fourth in the Nationals. It won the what do they call it, the Panamanian Cup. You know, I mean it.
Well, we're gonna go out
We
this
know it's
afternoon.
fast.
We're gonna go out around one-ish or so. We're
Looking for a sea breeze.
Yeah, sea breeze should come in around then, and then so we'll work on tuning
This
it. Till then.
dust is wrecking havoc with the sea breeze too.
Crew weight?
Well,
Typically.
one of the good things about the Snipe is that you can sail it with a combined weight of probably 270, 280, which Carol Cronin does all the time with a woman crew, all the way up to, I've seen the Brazilians and something with two guys in the boat running 320, 330. And they don't seem to make a whole lot of difference because the thing is so tunable. If you're overpowered, you can set the shrouds, you know, on a tighter setting. You can depower the rig, you can play the bang, and if you're underpowered, you straighten the mast up, you take everything, make it as powered up as you can be, and you have a weight limitation that's minimal. And I know that that's true. It's funny because in college racing, one of the big problems with college racing is that the 420s and the FJs are very weight sensitive. So all the teams have to carry 6 crews to the stupid race because you got your 100-pound crew and your 150-pound crew, depending on the wind conditions.
Yeah.
And we went through this when I was coaching all the time. It was crazy. You had to have extra plane tickets for everybody and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In St. Pete in 1997, we bought 8 Snipes and 8 420s. And we hosted 10 major regattas for 3 years. And the reason we bought the Snipes, and we put a basic rig on them, so it was kind of a college rig. Didn't have pole launchers. And first off, the Snipes beat the 420s around the same course 100% of the time. They are faster than 420s. People who race 420s don't realize that. FJs and 420s are not as fast. They're shorter, they're smaller, they're not as fast. And the other thing that was interesting, though, was if you talk to Aubrey Ike and Happy Zeiser and all the women who were sailing in the Snipes, you never sailed in the Snipes, did you?
No.
At USF, they
No.
were not there.
No.
But when college sailing signed a contract and they were all going to use the same performance on it. But what happened is that when we were doing those races where we had A division, B division, and snipes and 420s and switch, the most interesting thing is people would come from Harvard or California or Hawaii, and they'd say, wow, 2 girls that weigh a combined total of 220 pounds or 230 pounds, like a good example was Aubrey Ike, who was small, are competitive with 2 guys that are 300 pounds or 320 pounds in the snipe because you could power it up and depower. All the women had to do was depower.
No spinnaker on the spoon.
No. And so the fact that they could depower it was a huge change. And I thought maybe it would catch on. It didn't because of all the other politics and stuff. But some of the other, I know that Tufts uses Larks, and somebody else, I think MIT may have a set of MIT dinghies. They call them something like that. So some of the other boats manufacturers have complained about it, or boat colleges, because as an institution, having that ability to do a range of weight of 50 pounds is really useful. And that's helpful to me because I never know sometimes who I'm sailing with. You would think it would be Nadia all the time, but she's always off working or something, babysitting.
So there is a fleet here of 420s. Can we race them together?
Well, you can put them on the same course at the same time, but
Maybe score different.
yeah, they've got a different rating and scoring and everything, and they point different. And, this boat generally, in any kind of moderate wind, is going to point a little better than the 420s. Well, the 420s have a foil-shaped centerboard, so that's good in some ways. But if the course has any length to it, the snipes will outrun the 420. It's just a longer water line.
No electronics, no electronic aids. You get your stopwatch and a compass. That's it.
You can't even use your phone, right? In a race, you can't use your phone.
No, you can. The snipe class lets you use a tactic, or a compass or electronic compass.
Oh, so
But you can put a tactic on it.
But no GPS.
A tic-tac, no GPS. I'm not sure why the one design sailors are still doing that. A lot of the coaches now, have GPSs that they're tracking for tactics purposes and practice and stuff. There's some. It's a historical thing, We're all going to use the compass. That's okay, but we can't do anything. You're supposed to know if you're on a lift or a head. Even a GPS isn't going to tell you that there's a puff over there or a current over there. I always find those places that don't work. I have no trouble with that.
like a big magnet.
Yeah. But, there's nothing about a compass, electronic or otherwise. Or I'm not sure, frankly, with the problems that we have with starting in one design racing, where people are over and people say they're not over and people say they're over but they didn't get caught and we're trying to call them back and blah, 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 blah. To me, I think it'd be really useful to have something on your phone or GPS that just told you if you were over. That would mark the ends of the course.
Have everybody with their phones in the back of the boat.
Well, you just build it into your watch. I mean, my Apple Watch has GPS in it.
That's what the J70 does that.
Yeah.
And the problem with it is that they're not accurate enough.
Yeah.
And there's like a little bit of lag, and so people think they're on the line and they're not.
And they're not, yeah. Well, probably you would have to either ping the lines or
That's how it works.
yeah.
But you have to ping it, and that's another nightmare.
Exactly.
You got 70 boats pinging
Right.
it in every start.
Well, that's why, and so that's the kind of thing. That's why I'm thinking some genius ought to go and come up with something that the race committee can do that sends out the signal.
Oh yeah, sure.
So
and they know if you're over, but
and so yeah, but I don't know what the answer is, but at this point, how many times have we all sat there and restarted and restarted and restarted
until you get the black flag? And
yeah.
Look, you could do this. You could do exactly that with something simple like everybody's got a little GPS transceiver,
Right.
and just write the software so that the race committee knows where the pin is and
Right.
knows where each boat is, and if you're on this side of that line, the little red light goes up.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
Easy. It's easy.
Well, the stupid America's Cup catamaran
Yeah.
guys on bicycles are doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, you're in the boundary. Oh, beep, 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 beep. The little thing goes off. Okay, well, shoot, they're going 30, 40 miles an hour.
The cost of that is small now.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the technology has probably caught up to that point,
Yeah.
and it would make it so much easier. Can you imagine going to these stupid regattas without a restart? I mean, I don't know how many times I've been out there just about to kill someone. And then, of course, in New York, we just left and went in.
Yeah.
We were the first ones back to the bar because I knew they weren't going to race.
Yeah.
I was sitting there telling her, I said, we're not going to race. This is stupid. It had two restarts, and then the wind was dying. I said, hell with this. You know, and I think that if you recognize that, and you know, that's fine. But yeah, I don't know how many times. It doesn't matter. J70s, sonars, everything. You know, it's just crazy.
So I think my phone's gonna die here soon.
Okay.
So we'll just
All
wrap
right.
it
Well,
up then.
we're past 10:30 now, so we've gone an hour and a half. So y'all can email questions or WhatsApp or whatever it is.
Yep, and then I'll put these on WhatsApp, the sheets you have.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions online?
No. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation.
Is that the same way you do in Spain?
It's similar.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Y'all have very good sailors in Spain.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a big fleet.
Yeah. 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 I've raced against them. They're very, very good.
Yes, we have 4 or 5 that are really, really good sailors.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope y'all can come visit if we can get rid of the virus.
Oh yeah.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Really cool.
Alrighty, I'll post this
Alright.
when I get a chance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Nadia, are we going sailing today?
Yes, we are at 1 o'clock.
At 1? Okay. Me and Michael are he just got an offer accepted on a house, so we have a meeting with our realtor at like 11:30. So we might be a little late.
Yeah, no problem. Come out when you get out here. We have the boat here, so we're gonna work on tuning it.
Okay, cool. All right, sounds good. See you later.
All right, see you guys.
We have,
Bye.
Bye.
you know, this, well, the virus, we've got dust storms, we've got viruses, we got.